Intro. We all live in cities or some type of town. We all live somewhere. We know that. That's obvious. The size of where you live depends on what type of area you live in. If it's rural, it's probably smaller. If it's a city or urban, it's larger. But if it's a capital or something like that, it's on the huge side. Houses are houses, and they're everywhere you can imagine. Except for national parks. But why does this matter? Because the city you live in also determines what type of life you live. Or if you live near a big city, it can also change the way you live. Your city is defined by what is near you and what you have access to. So we can see what that really means in terms of like city design and stuff. Usually big cities, mostly coastal American or European ones, have railways or some form of public transportation. Maybe your city or town has it, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But if it does, it just means you can get around to certain places faster, which unlocks more forms of socialization. That's the main part about cities that are important for high functionality. Places where you can work and places where you can socialize. Really the two most important parts of any city that can keep people in and not drive them out. It's also just known as the community of a town and how it's built from these roots. The roots in which you don't really notice are like the stuff like what's in your town versus what's in other towns and how people in there are like. That's another thing about cities and towns, really. That no town has everything, but something like a county in the US would have a lot to do. It just depends on how close the towns are. You know how it is. But right now, we're just talking about single cities. Single cities like to usually manipulate the land it owns to use it for more interesting things. What that is varies city to city. Vegas, it's mainly gambling and casinos because it's Vegas, while some other places do like rail trails or places to walk or like stuff like that usually. Everywhere has something to do. If they don't, you have a situation where there's nothing to do, so people don't do anything. In a lot of cases like this, you have people who will drive or go out of their city to a neighboring one just to get to do something like fun, or looking for further places away while staying in one location like a house or something. We can take the idea of some places like a mall, for example, which we'll talk about these places later, but if someone felt like going to the mall and they lived in town A, but the mall is in town B or town C, they'll drive out to the city to get there just to do something, which also hurts town A's community of sorts and the economy of town A. When you have a weak economy, your town starts to shrink or become more dead. It becomes very similar to a rust belt if it had a lot of production, or just a ghost town if you start having expensive housing and less things to do. People just move out. Every town is always changing all the time. So sometimes that's for the better if a city makes it that way, and sometimes it's for the worse if naturally the city starts to decay over time into essentially nothing. So there is a concept in city like building called third places. A third place is basically where you can hang out with friends, socialize with people, and all that pizzazz. It's called a third place because it gives you a third place that you could be at that isn't your work or your house, because you obviously go to both of those. A common example of these could be like a movie theater or a mall, but not like a strip mall or anything. Well, including that, but it's more heavily central mall like. People usually go to third places if they supply a good enough experience. A lot of places feel like third places, but really don't have the idea of what it is. Imagine you went to a mall and it was just like a JCPenney, a Macy's, and a Costco. Some malls are actually like that, even though what I described sounds more like not fun and more like a Walking Dead scenario. It's not. That's how some malls are for these smaller towns. I've talked about Rust Belts before, and it really is similar to Rust Belts, but for malls and commercialization in them. That may be due to a bunch of reasons, but one of them is due to the rise of corporations and smaller businesses being less common over time. Small businesses are kind of struggling, depending on what they are. This is due in part with things like tariffs increasing prices of some products and supply chains, but also the big rise of large corporations either being put in malls or other places taking out these small businesses. If people see these big corporations that can put things for lower prices and kind of afford that, people will go there and buy from fewer companies, and then the lower prices eventually will rise, which would cause like some form of price manipulation. That's a different conversation, but this in turn causes less competition between businesses and drives smaller businesses either out of business or somewhere else. It's like if you've ever played Civilization and your goal is to get as much land and points as possible. Land is still land, that's unchanged, but points is money, and that's what some big corporations are like. You can't let them take up too much space because then it's not even a mall anymore, it's just an extended corporation shop. But it is fine if you have corporations that are there and not trying to drive other businesses out of business to replace them. I like to call these types of stores and businesses like mall attractors. A mall attractor is one of those companies you see in every mall. The JCPenney, the Macy's, if they're still in business, just the name everyone knows and recognizes. It can bring people to a mall. They know quality, so they'll go there to buy from there, and it may help other businesses. It's usually like a clothing shop or something like that. Picture this. You're in a mall with you and your friends. Doesn't matter how many of your friends. Or I think I need some new clothes. Can we go to the Dallas Mall? I don't know if that's real or not, but you head to the Dallas Mall. You see, let's use Burlington as an example, because I think that's a national mall. Not the best, but you can get some clothes in there. You go there, get one or two clothes, then head out. You enter this long hallway full of stores and full of signs of all this random stuff. I mean, it must be full of a lot of stuff I might want, you think to yourself. You stop into one store, then the next, and then the next that look interesting. Continue that for how many stores you find. 1, it's a fun experience, and 2, you supported small businesses. It's a symbiotic relationship. But imagine not having that second part. That's the thing that happens when malls start to die. Less people go there and small businesses can't survive and then close down, making the mall a husk of what it used to be. It'd be nothing more than a walking ground at that point, and that's not really entertaining at all. Kinda boring if you ask me personally. Malls are kind of the one of the things that can bring life to a city, but helps the economy be well and not just still or stagnant. They also help people go out, but malls aren't the only third place. There's a bunch of other third places that exist, like coffee shops and all that other stuff. You know them, the other funner, cozy places people hang out sometimes. These are also kind of in decline. We can use Starbucks as an example, not for decline, of course, but in terms of a third place, where people use the drive-thru more than actually going in there and either working on something or socializing. Even though Starbucks is now a conglomerate, really, it used to be a small coffee shop at one point. So it used to be that mini cafe that was used as a third place. It's like a library. It doesn't matter where you go, it'll give off the same vibe of a small little shop. You get the same products at every location, with some varying, and they mostly give you the same services. Somewhere to drink or read, tables to sit at, people that come and also participate in this activity. Even though that last one is out of their control, you get the idea though. It's like the idea of a small hanging out spot. Even if you don't use these places, they still are part of your town or nearby area. Can't really imagine it without it, which is why they need to be kept around. It's better than empty buildings. Anything's really better than empty buildings, unless you are an urban explorer and love exploring them. When you have nothing, or you have to drive far away to get something, you might start to feel lonely in a way, in a sense that there's nothing to do, and you have to create your own fun and all that to have fun. You don't want that. Nobody really does. Everyone has a place and time in mind when making plans for fun. But then you get to the alternatives for these places if you, say, can't drive that far. What do you do when you're bored? It's an easy question. If you have a smartphone, you might say you go on that to pass the time. It makes sense. A lot of us do that, just because it's so convenient to us. If we could talk to our friends through our phone while we're in our house, why would we leave? It just makes no logical sense to do that. That's how they get you. Convenience does not always mean a good substitute. If you're sick or something like that, it would be a good temporary replacement until you get better, but it's always preferred to go outside and all that stuff. But when you just have social media as a replacement, it doesn't really work in the same way. It just makes you feel more isolated and alone. But you may be wondering, why? How could it make you feel more isolated even if you get the same amount of conversations with friends? You're still getting social interactions, right? Wrong. Falso. You just replace the type of social interaction you get. So you start to crave real human interactions. FaceTime can work sometimes, but it's just kind of a band-aid to a big wound. That's what I've heard. It may differ person to person. We're made to be social creatures, so we want to hang out with people in real life. In-person interaction. When you don't have anywhere you could get these, even just with random people, it starts to feel like a ghost town. Walking is fun, but after a while you need new places to see. Explorer mentality. So what can you do, even if you have nothing? Find something. Try a new thing, really, I guess. Cities and towns are kind of made to be explored now. They weren't built for it, but it's a fun thing to do at least. Starting small by walking from one place to another can help, but then through that you'll find more things. It's like a plant, and walking is the stem essentially. You find more things and things to do the more you walk. Maybe find a coffee shop or a cool little knick-knack store that you can explore. But it all requires exploration through a city or area. That's all mainly people can do, since most people can't really build stuff or tell people to build stuff just due to lack of power. But it's a start at least, and it doesn't require more intervention from higher powers. So what can people in higher powers do? It's simple, but it requires a real push forward to actually wanting to make sure people are less lonely and have things to do. Lower taxes on small businesses so they can actually thrive. A budgets of different conversation, but that's really what they have to do. Limit corporation power so they can't buy external forces and get rid of small businesses by raising taxes on them. Raising taxes on corporations and forcing them to explain any price increases would help small businesses grow more and more. But that's a simple version of the solution. But it would be a mix of that and also wanting to build and promote these third places like parks and other things like coffee shops. That's another budget thing, but that requires the will. The will to build those things and get them out there. An ideal world is a world where cities are a big third place and it's filled with trees and nature as well, while having cool technology and houses, I guess. It's called solar punk, but I don't like the images they use for that. That would take a while to happen, but we need somewhere people could go and be motivated to go, since sometimes there are places but people aren't motivated to go there. Which brings us to the second part of how this could be fixed. The idea of getting people themselves motivated to get out there and go outside and socialize. If you build a house and nobody buys it, you'll start to wonder what the point of it was to build it. There wasn't any. So also getting people motivated to go to these places would help grow a community and help break people out of this isolation. There's many ways to do this, but I like the idea of having them everywhere, but also making them more appealing, making it seem like there's something to do, maybe like small activities like karaoke, social events, all of that stuff really. Just anything to get people out of in their like isolated world and out of their house really. There's division in many things which could lead to isolation in some cases. You may not think of political division as something that may be affecting socialization in cities, but it's kind of true when you look at where people are like getting different sources and such. I know politics usually isn't something that's brought up as a cold opener. Frankly, I think that scares more people off if you do. But sometimes, as of recently, politics has been made more and more part of our lives. Everybody's got an opinion in politics now. It's not just for the losers anymore. But this kind of grew a lot in part due to the pandemic. The iconic 2020 pandemic that some people on TikTok really want to go back to for some reason, but has shaped a lot of problems today. Since everyone was stuck inside, there was just a lot of stuff that didn't happen. It was because everyone was stuck inside that like the things like AI grew and online spaces became even larger than they were. They don't have the same level of popularity as they did before, but you can see heavy influence of where people get their information from and stuff like that. Like who they'll rely on and where their mindset is kind of formed from. You can either try to get a diverse opinion and add yours into the mix and get yelled at, or just stay where you're comfortable. A lot of people choose the latter and just decide to surround themselves with those types of people. Then using that timeline that I just mentioned, even though it may not be a timeline because I didn't say that, we can use it. In these groups, you are just kind of pulled in whatever direction you want, what feels right to you. Extremism is kind of grown from this, and that's never really a good thing. I think everyone can agree on that. There's no barrier to cross the bridge, so we end up building walls between ourselves. That's why we need more of these social gathering type spots. They would help act as ways to help destroy the walls and help us connect better, because that's what we really need in this world right now. Connections, not isolation. Everyone feels better after socializing, even if the interaction was awkward. That's the human spirit in full. We all love socializing, so there's no need to see that trait be selective. But it also requires not relying on online places to use as socialization places, because this is what causes third places to die or phase out. When a digital or more convenient place like a Discord server, for example, can be seen as a good enough replacement because they say the same stuff you do, that kind of makes a new problem. It makes new third places that are really just third places in quotes, because you don't get the human interaction you would if you were talking with them in person. Of course, you can break that barrier and meet in person, but sometimes that's harder to do. I know people online from the quarantine and the pandemic from places like Ohio and Britain, so that would kind of be hard to break down that wall and meet in person. But online friends aren't bad to have. It's just concerning when you only have online friends. No one should be able to break that digital wall and get to the real, genuine connections. That's what people are after. I meant to say you shouldn't not be able to break down that wall. That's two negatives, but you get the idea. Genuine connections is the point of it. But you may be wondering what to do with this if this is part of your problem. Since it's kind of a newer thing, it's hard to say one modern solution, since we're also in the sooner part of getting out of things like quarantine and all those other things. So there's no true definition, but there's different steps everyone can take towards getting out there. So let's go up that social ladder, that hierarchy, one step at a time, because it's different for everyone, but they all connect in some way. The first step in the bottom one, even though it's the most important, is the people. The people who live in these towns and cities and want more. Many things that could be done, but the most important ones are getting out there, as mentioned before, and also making the best of what you have currently. But the other thing you can do is to tell people like your mayor, your house member in the Congress, that's a big word and important, about the issue, and maybe they'll help you out. Like, Many people in power apparently don't know about a problem until a lot of people have to vocally tell them about it. So talk with the people about issues like this. Maybe they'll bring a law to help with it or something. It's always worth a shot since a lot of people would be on board with it. But then we move up the ladder to people like mayors in some companies. If you're a mayor, assuming you still get federal funding, have like companies or public people build places to socialize. If an abandoned building isn't having anyone in it, transform it. Make use of every possible meter of the city that is inhabited. It's the same thing with state and statewide jobs. Just use every meter you can to make sure there's more things to do and everywhere looks pretty and people can go out, easily socialize and all that stuff. Nature blended with cities are pretty, so focusing on stuff like that will help people be more social. Like cities like Boston, New York, mainly ones with trains, have this part right, where you can easily get places by using the train, the buses, any form of public transportation is good. That's why we should have more of it, so people can get places. It's also that and state laws that might give small things like food prices if people get out might help motivate them to do these things. Laws really are the judges, arbitrators, and motivators behind people's actions. Not the sole one, but one of them. Making them more motivating rather than deterring makes people want to participate in them. But if you force stuff down people's throats, you're making them more authoritarianism-ish. Like dictator-ish, like dystopian. But that's a spectrum for how laws should be made. That's not what I'm going to talk about. Now, if we move to a national and international level, we can look at how we should have international collaboration. Countries should be helping each other out if they have their own situations figured out. That's the idea behind trickle-down economics. The true idea that could happen, but no. Greediness gets in the way. Fill other people's glasses once you fill your own. But since none of these places and none of us probably aren't at that level, we can just put that one in a pin for now until we get someone who believes in that mentality. But overall, those are the general ways to fix the idea of cityscapes. Not every one of them, but to give an idea on how to move in the right direction. Nothing too big, but not anything that's easy either. It's always best to experience life in nature for yourself. It just feels good to always see nature in the flesh, no matter how many times you go outside. It's just really natural. So just try to do your best to experience life like that. That's one of the main takeaways from this. Because all that matters for something like loneliness in city designs is up to people who are in government and who control contracts and stuff like that. So if you want to do that, or it sounds interesting, maybe you should find a job in that job or sector. That's it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Pretty please.